So I have a theory. Let me know your thoughts. I might be wrong, but I would say that people today just aren't reading and writing as much as we used to. Let's say you want to read a book. A lot of people will just go to Audible to save time and, I guess, energy as well. If you want to write something substantial or, your homework, maybe you'll go to ChatGPT or some other AI tool for help. If you want to learn about a topic, you simply go to YouTube and watch a 15 or 20-minute video, covering all the most important information instead of going to the library and actually getting a book, reading a book. It saves you a lot of time. It makes sense, right? Welcome to part 2 of Is English in Decline? My name is Lana. I'm a linguist by education and artist at heart, and I talk about everything on this channel, it seems. Overall, our society just doesn't put as much emphasis on spelling and grammar and punctuation anymore. And it does make sense. Just think about how our lives are structured today, where most of our communication takes place. A lot of our communication takes place online, which always has been and probably always will be a not such a strict place for language. Everything is a bit more casual online, including language. And let's not forget, although this could be a video on its own, that a lot of internet users are not native English speakers. Point being, there are a lot of factors at play here. And it is what it is. It's the sign of the times, right? And I do want to emphasize, I'm not saying that we should all speak perfectly at all times, everywhere, that no one is allowed to make mistakes because we're only human. We all make mistakes. No one speaks perfectly all the time. But my little linguist heart does believe that mastering language, mastering communication, is a sign of a prosperous society. Being able to express yourself concisely, succinctly, those are positive things. Recognizing situations where it's more desirable to be casual, as well as masterfully switching to a different register when the occasion calls for it, that's something admirable. You often hear those who correct others on grammar characterized as annoying. And okay, we can be sometimes, I'll admit. Also classist. Internet loves the word classist. All the isms are the it words of the 2020s. But I digress. The funny thing about the lowering of linguistic standards is the fact that you don't notice it right away. It's subtle, right? You don't see the consequences straight away. But I want you to think about this for a moment. Kids today, Gen Alpha, they're spending a lot of time online. They're following a lot of different creators who, of course, are just human. They don't always spell their titles correctly. They don't always pronounce things correctly. Even we, when we were kids, right? The creators, influencers that we were following, they didn't always speak properly either. But still, we did not spend as much time online, and that wasn't the bulk of the information that we were taking in. We were still exposed to more grammatically correct media sources, whatever, books, cartoons, as opposed to today. How do you think those kids that are exposed to all sorts of grammar, correct and incorrect, how do you think they will read, write, spell in the future? What do you think is going to stick more? Something that's drilled into their heads for a test or two, or something that they are continuously exposed to and they take it in subconsciously without probably even realizing what they're taking in? Gen Alpha, in America at least, has trouble reading, writing, spelling. And absolutely, switching to online classes during the pandemic a few years ago, that definitely played its role. But I don't think we can blame everything on that. The term iPad kids didn't pop up out of nowhere. It came about for a reason. And I think that exposure to online content and what sort of content they're exposed to, the upbringing, it definitely plays a role. And it's really sad to see those stories, those horror stories, that teachers on TikTok and YouTube have been posting about how poorly their pupils are performing.
I'm not even trying to be funny, but these kids are... I'm going to just say this. I teach 7th grade. They are still performing on the 4th grade level.
Kids cannot read. They cannot write. They are ill-mannered. I've been trying to sound the alarm about Gen Alpha students and their poor behavior in their classrooms, as well as their literacy problems, since May of last year. Poor children are missing the mark on discipline, they're missing the mark on education standards, they're missing the mark on literacy, they're missing the mark on socialization.
Another factor that, in my opinion, no doubt contributes to the lowering of literacy is autocorrect, AI tools, because slowly but surely we are relying more and more on these tools rather than on our own brain. Of course, not entirely yet, but to some extent, definitely. Imagine if you had 2 healthy legs, but you used crutches to walk around all the time for years. If you stopped using those crutches at some point, your legs, your muscles would be weak. You wouldn't really know how to walk. It would probably be hard to stand for long periods of time. As helpful as, spelling and grammar tools are, they encourage us to use certain knowledge less and less, and we are therefore more likely to lose it. I want to take a quick detour and consider not only AI tools that, we use for writing, but also AI tools that generate images. In order to get an AI image tool to create a picture as close as to what you're imagining, you have to write a prompt. And in order to get good results, you have to be as accurate as possible. But ultimately, it is just a summary. In high school, as part of our final exams, we had to read Anna Karenina, and then we had an exam based on the book. There's a chapter about one of the characters mowing the grass with a scythe. I think it's something like that. And this one scene goes on for several pages. One scene being described across several pages. Imagine how much you have to engage your brain, how broad of a vocabulary you need, how much skill with words to be able to write about one scene for several pages. And I'm not saying that we should all aspire to this, not at all, but it made me think about painting with words. People forsaking painting with words and instead choosing to write prompts so that a machine can then fill in the blanks, add the spice, add the meat, so that a machine can enrich your dry text in comparison. There's something sad about that. Lastly, I want to quickly touch on the neopronouns and xenopronouns and all that. I did talk about this in the past in my previous videos, but neopronouns and the desire to manipulate or control language, there's a connection here. It's quite interesting though. I think it's mostly subconscious, like no one thinks about this when they're demanding that people use whatever pronouns for them, but there is a mindset in the neopronouns community, again, subconscious, I think, that language belongs to an individual, or that you as an individual somehow have control over language, or the language that is used for you. It's funny because people will say, I use this and this pronoun, but that's not really accurate. You don't really use most pronouns for yourself. What you're saying is, I want you to use certain pronouns for me when you're talking about me. I wish to control how you speak about me. Since we express our inner world and our thoughts with words, by extension, you don't just want to control how people talk about you, but you want to control how people think about you. And that's a discussion for another time. To address the question from my title, I don't know if English is in decline any more than it was at any given point in history. But even though languages have undergone changes in the past and are constantly undergoing changes, the changes that English is undergoing now are very different than any changes in the past. One word: internet. It's because of how internet allows us to share information, misinformation, and what sort of communication we can have thanks to the internet. Let me know your thoughts on this topic in the comments down below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy this sort of content. It really helps with the algorithm. As always, take care, and I'll see you soon.